Hello everybody, it's back to Monday Night Football next as we traipse across town to visit Chelsea, who apparently play somewhere in South London according to the West Ham official website. Kick-off is at 8 p.m. for the benefit of Sky Sports, and the Eyes Up Mother Brown lot will be on duty assuming they can work out how to find the match, which, on past performance, is not a given by any stretch of the imagination. So then, Chelsea. Well, a few weeks back they were toddling along nicely, having started to convert draws to wins. There was enough happening in the W column for them to start thinking about a realistic bid for the title, especially when you consider that it was Tottenham who were in pole position at the time. However, it all seems to have gone a little bit bandy over the past few weeks. The season started off well enough with a 3-1 win over Brighton that was a lot easier than the result suggests. They then went down 2-0 at home to Liverpool before drawing 3-3 up at the Hawthorns. A routine 4-0 defeat of Palace was followed by something of a thriller, with them going 2-0 and 3-2 up against Southampton, only to drop 2 points right at the death to a stoppage time equaliser. A slightly less thrilling 0-0 draw followed at Man United. Then started their best little run of the season, with wins away at Burnley 3-0, home to Sheffield United 4-1, and away at Newcastle 2-0. That run being broken only by a rather dull 0-0 draw at home to Tottenham. It was at this point that things started to go slightly awry, with defeats at Everton 1-0 and at Wolves 2-1, beginning to rein in some of their more loftier ambitions a bit. All of which leaves them in 7th place before the latest round of games. They've got 22 points from the 13 played so far, which is a point and a place above us as I write this. As you might expect from a club with a reputation for converting Russian money into capital assets, they brought in a shed load. Shed load, get it? See what I did there? Suit yourself. In what passed for the closed season. Daisy, the socially distant, support-bubbling personal assistant with a beautiful smile, tells me that the biggest fee paid was the eye-watering £72 million, including add-ons, laid out for Bayer Leverkusen midfielder Kai Havertz. Leverkusen's youngest ever debutant, when appearing at the age of 17 and a bit, he's struggled to come to terms with the Premier League so far, though at the age of 21 I suppose they've got a fair bit of time for the deal to come good. The fee paid for Havertz was the second largest paid by the club after the similar amount paid for Kepa the keeper a few years back. Kepa's had a poor run of form towards the end of last term, which led to his being dropped. He was reinstated at the start of this season, but his form failed to improve. So, armed with a dodgy keeper, and not being blessed with the son of a much-loved former player to step into the breach, they spent £22 million on Rennes custodian Edouard Mendy. The French-born Mendy played a few matches against club sides for pointless favourite country Guinea-Bissau, the country of his father's birth. However, when push came to shove, it was the player's mum who won out, and he's now a fully-fledged Senegalese international. They went back to the Bundesliga to bring in Timo Werner from RB Leipzig. £47.5 million was enough to trigger the release clause for the striker, who was part of the German squad that failed to escape the group stages of the last World Cup. Werner is currently the pensioners' top scorer in the league, with 4 in 13 starts so far. Throw in the League Cup and the so-called Champions League efforts, and he's got 8 in 20 so far this season. Fullback Ben Chilwell has also chipped in with a couple of goals this season. Some sources quote the fee paid to Leicester for the fullback as being £45,180,000, which seems a delightfully random amount if accurate. Maybe they threw in a set of shin pads or something. There are various versions of the fee payable to Ajax for midfielder Hakim Ziyech. Some say 36 million, some say 40 million, rising to 44 million. Perhaps they were haggling over the shin pads. Incidentally, is it just me, or do modern-day shin pads look like they'd be more at home in the sanitary products aisle of Boots? I mean, imagine the scream you'd get from Grealish if and when somebody actually makes contact with him through the wafer-thin panty liners that he stuffs down his socks. Where were we? Oh yes, Ziyech. Born and raised in the Netherlands, he's got Dutch caps at age level up to and including under 21. However, despite making the senior squad for a couple of friendlies, he's elected to plump for the Morocco of his family heritage, and he now has 37 caps for the Moroccans, netting a handy 17 goals in the process. He opened his account for Chelsea with a goal in the 3-0 win-up at Burnley. With all the money being splashed around, the arrival of Thiago Silva on a free looks a little bit out of place. The fee, or lack of it, can be attributed to the player's age. At 36, he's won 7 French titles with PSG, but was unable to go one better with the Parisians, being as he was on the losing side in last season's so-called Champions League final. Let's move on, shall we, to the wild and wacky world of association football. And recently, clubs queued up to support the recent Rainbow Shoelaces initiative. Many trumpeted their virtues by placing suitably anodyne news articles on their official websites. Liverpool, for example, proudly boasted to the world of their support for this campaign by outlining the various schemes that the club's charitable foundation are involved in. Well, that's not quite true. When I said boasted to the world, it seems Liverpool's world is limited to those countries where support for such things is an accepted part of human rights. The Scousers' Arabic and Indonesian websites, for example, seem strangely bereft of support for that particular cause. Now, you might think it would be a good thing to signal to those parts of the world with a less than enlightened view of these matters that what you think is acceptable. However, as ever, the Scousers were able to rationalise their actions. Apparently, they felt that including mention of such support might cause more harm than good to the cause. The phrase "the cause" presumably including such trifles as the club's lucrative revenue streams from those territories. Elsewhere in the Arabic world, the Premier League has signed a new multi-squillion pound TV deal with Qatari interests. The one club who voted against the deal was Newcastle, whose takeover by Saudi interests finally fell through earlier this year. The Qataris lobbied extensively against the Saudi-Geordie deal, claiming Saudi involvement in illegal rebroadcast of matches. Now, I'm sure all is above board, but the Premier League has never given its reasons for blocking the Newcastle deal, and it seems not to have occurred to anyone that the deal might just look like a reward for doing the Qataris busy. It's all about revenue streams, isn't it? Well, let's move on to us. A point was welcome after the poor first half we had the other night. Diop, understandably, was well off the pace, having not started since testing positive for COVID back in the autumn. I think it was a good call by Mr. Moyes to bring on Lanzini for the largely anonymous Fornals, who seems to be making a habit of missing sitters at the moment. Lanzini seemed a lot more incisive and may have played himself into the starting lineup for this one. Haller's goal was a gem right from the start to its spectacular finish. Started with Fabianski, and it included man of the match Koufal's powerful run down the right, some nice patient passing before Lanzini brought Koufal back into play. The move finished with the perfectly executed overhead finish from Haller, in what was possibly the least unintelligent thing that was said by the Eyes Up Mother Brown team on the night. It was such a good goal that even Haller celebrated it. On the sending off, Benteke was a bit unlucky perhaps. However, there was the usual ignorance of the laws of the game on display from the massed ranks of football punditry, all of whom were seen to be bemoaning the fact that Benteke went despite not elbowing his marker in the face. Most pundits electing to amplify the point by the use of miming such an action. Well, there's a point well and truly missed. The deliberate throwing of an elbow in the manner described would have given rise to a straight red for use of excessive force. It's a completely different offence to that for which Benteke was actually sanctioned, which was for being reckless in his disregard for the danger to an opponent. The sanction for that is a yellow. So the main argument was whether Benteke had been careless, which would have been a foul, no yellow, or reckless, foul and yellow, on each occasion. I think the first was more borderline than the second, for which the second yellow was sadly inevitable. Rookie Coote having painted himself into a corner with the borderline first decision. Either way, a player with more intelligence than Benteke might have considered his jumping style since he was on a yellow already. As I write this, I've just finished watching the Palace-Liverpool game. I note Zaha's complete lack of presence, and would like to suggest to any Palace fans out there that if they're wondering where he is, they might still want to have a quick look in Koufal's pocket. On to this one then. Well, the injury position with Balbuena is a bit vague. Earlier this week it was suggested he might have actually played against Palace if necessary the other night. However, Mr. Moyes was a bit more guarded about the player in his last press conference. We'll have a look, being about as committed as he would go. There are also doubts over Bowen and Cresswell, who both have ankle problems, and whilst Antonio is training again, I expect that the newly expanded bench might be the height of his ambitions this week. Incidentally, with more subs allowed on the bench, I fear we're about to see exactly how little depth our squad really has, especially if one or two more of the doubtfuls don't heal up in time. Prediction? Well, I think all three results are on the table this week. Chelsea have problems with consistency, but although they've got a couple of injury doubts, they do have enough players for that not to be an issue. For us, I'm hoping for a first half performance akin to that at home to Manchester United, rather than the one we displayed against Palace. With that, a win's not out of the question. However, I'm going to stick this one on the pool's coupon this week, so please, Mr. Winston, take the £2.50 I was going to put towards a copy of the Guide to Championship Grounds to send to Arsenal, and place it on a wager with your turf accountancy business on a 2-2 draw. Enjoy the game.